don't me, I pretty well just, I'm a teacher, and I travel all over the place, just doing what I love doing, which is teaching. And anything to do with maximizing human awareness, human potential, and helping people live magnificent and inspired lives is what I'm up to. I full-time travel. I just got in here a few days ago. I was in, wherever it was, Maputo and Durban and Cape Town, and before that, Dubai and Tokyo in the last few weeks. So I just travel. And I was asked to speak tonight by Tina. And she said that she wanted me to just print some money and everybody have money. And I didn't know if that was something you wanted to do, so I just didn't know. She said that she wanted to do something on health and wealth. And we just talked a little about health. But I don't know if that's something you're interested in after this. We might have to just stay with health. I don't know. Is wealth in any way an interest to anybody? Put your hands up if you'd like me to talk about that. Oh, okay. Well, you know, it's interesting. I was doing a presentation on adding years to life and life to years. That was the title. And I was talking about longevity. And one of the key ingredients that has been demonstrated in longevity is actually, besides reducing food intake and having a clear mind intention for something that you have to live for that's pretty extraordinary, but one of them was actually having wealth. People who live with a higher degree of wealth definitely live longer. And I've definitely seen that in South Africa, where I have also an office. I have had the opportunity to work with townships where people, in one township, Kailicha, anybody been to Kailicha, South Africa by chance? They have 2 million people living in 1 square mile, and the average age that they live is 48, and they don't have very great lifestyle, as you can imagine. The average income is $200 a year, and 85% unemployment. Okay? And I may even share a story about a young boy from there that's changed his life. But so there's no doubt that there is a correlation between health and wealth. And about 26 years ago, I did a program called Health and Wealth with a financial planner. And so I'm very much fascinated by those two topics. I believe that there's 7 areas of life. And then some people have broken life into 6 areas and 8 areas and maybe 10 areas and things. But I like to think of that we all have a spiritual quest, something that inspires us. We have a mind development quest, something that inspires us to learn, to grow. We have a vocational quest. We want to make a contribution to the world and do a service. Financial quest. We want to have more money at the end of our life than life at the end of our money. And we have a family quest. We want to have some love and intimacy and possibly some offspring that live beyond us. And we have a desire for making a contribution in society, a social cause. And we also have a desire to have physical well-being and health and well-being. And I believe that we're here to, and designed to, expand and empower each of those areas. And I've said for many years that any area in our life that we don't empower, somebody else will overpower. And so we're not victims of that over-empowerment. We're simply not empowered. So maybe I can discuss a little bit of all those areas, but primarily financial empowerment tonight and how it relates to maybe well-being. Would that be useful? Does everybody have something to write with and write on? Just in case you do want to take a note. I don't have this fancy handouts. I just have me. But is there some paper around and pens?
Somebody need pens and paper? I can grab it.
And can I use this little board?
Yeah, they're all good.
Okay. And these are the right markers. I've gotten on markers and I'm going, I can't get it off. By the way, I am from Houston. I'm from Houston originally. And how long we know each other now? 20, 28, 25, at least 25. I see a picture up there that I recognize. I don't know if you recognize that picture up there. That's somebody from way back.
Everybody good?
Last FY. This is the beginning of my 40th year of teaching. So I've been teaching 40 years. So I love it. I really believe when you do what you love and love what you do, you don't age as much. I really believe that does make a difference. So maybe we can talk about that. Thousands of years ago, when nomadic lifestyles became more stabilized with the introduction of a seed and the agricultural stage of anthropology, a division of labor and class emerged. Because somebody was really good at cooking, another person was good at basket weaving, another person was maybe good at managing people, and another person was good at harvesting or who knows what. Everybody had different jobs. And so they started to have a need for a means of exchanging various trades. So in other words, if I went up to you and you had a cow, and I didn't need a whole cow, and I did a service and I don't need a whole cow, it's hard to do an exchange. And if you need a basket, but you only have a service that provides the payment for half a basket, I don't need a half a basket. So it became awkward. So they had to create a common means of exchange, a medium of exchange, and a common place where people could bring together their particular expertise and have some sort of fair exchange system, and they need a medium of exchange. And of course, it started out as cattle and eventually coins, and then paper, and then plastic, and then electronics, and then finally now light. So actually, the medium of economics today is light. And it started out very materialized, and it's now become, in a sense, enlightened. But there was a necessity of finding a common weight and measure and a common unit of exchange for society, because that increased the probability of having fairness in the exchange process between various skills and classes and contributions in as far as a value-added service. So many people have associated emotions with money, but money is simply a way of efficiently exchanging various types of services. And my observation is the people who have the mastery of wealth, which by the way means well-being or whole being or wholeness, are the people who have transcended the labels, emotional labels, and the evaluations of money and understood it for what it is for, which is a means of exchange. But if we see somebody using money for a purpose that challenges our individual values, we tend to associate pain or withdrawal or a negative or a bad or something like that. We tend to label it that way. If we see somebody using it for something we think supports our values, we tend to associate a positive relationship to money. But anytime we associate a positive or negative association with money, where we become infatuated or resentful to money, then it runs us. And until we have a transcendent awareness about money and appreciate its means to an end, which is fair exchange, we have difficulty managing it. Warren Buffett says, until you can manage emotions, don't ever expect to manage money. Because the very thing that tends to interfere with the mastery and the wealth process is emotions. I believe the gentleman who wrote the book, The 48 Laws to Power, maybe you saw that, he said basically the same thing. Don't ever expect to empower your life if you can't transcend emotional polarities, the infatuations and resentments to life, if you will. So I just want to say that even though this may be common sense, believe it or not, after being in front of literally millions of people, most people don't realize that they're still in bondage to the emotional vicissitudes associated with money. They're either infatuated with it, and it runs them, or resentful to it unconsciously because of programs. We have been indoctrinated through primarily religious constructs in a way that has polarized us and supported the polarization of our view of money. It's more blessed to give than to receive, those kind of things. If you stop and think about that, that's insane. If it's more blessed to give than to receive, then the person you're giving it to is cursed. Porphyry, the Greek philosopher, and even Plato described what they called the craft, the priestcraft, and the games of the priestcraft used in order to tax the populace, to secure their position and to allow them to have their lifestyle. Now, there has always been an essential component of society to have tithing or taxing or what they call first fruits. First fruits were, in a society, approximately 7% of all societies have people who don't work. Either you're very young or very old, and they're not able to work. They're unemployed. That's why about a 7% unemployment is a pretty standard. In fact, even in ant beds and ant farms, when they study this, they find out that 7% of the ants don't do crap. If you go and watch ants, which I have done, you'll see that some are carrying huge loads, and others are just sitting there, smoking a joint, eating some weeds and stuff. I'm just joking. But I look out in this audience, and I have a sense that these people relate to what I just said, because they come from that era. I remember the 60s. I knew it. Of course, if you were there, you shouldn't have remembered it. But until you can manage emotions, it's not likely to ever manage money. And until you can value money, you won't do it. Now, I want to share an interesting thing. I do travel, and one of the programs, or some of the programs that I've done, deal with economics. And I ask people, how many of you would love to be financially independent? I'll ask this group. There's about 40, 50 people here. How many of you would love to have financial independence? Okay, hold your hands up. Hold your hand up. I want everybody to look. Everybody has their hands up probably. Most of you. Except the people that have financial independence and already know. But most people want financial independence. And so I look around the room, and I'm sometimes in front of thousands of people, and I see everybody have their hand up, which means that their passive investment income is exceeding their active income and giving them the lifestyle they want, right? But isn't it interesting that only 1, 2, or maybe 3% of the world's population ever obtain it? So that means that 1%er, they're called the 1%ers, that only 1% actually achieve what 100% of the people say they want. 99% of the people are therefore living with some degree of delusion. Would you agree? And I'd like to maybe discuss what makes that distinction. Would that be useful? What makes the 1 and 99%ers different? Would that be useful? Because there is a true human behavioral reason for that distinction. And once you understand it, there's things you can do if you're interested in becoming the 1%ers. I chose to do that, and I'm in that 1% now. But I did it because I learned what I'm about to share with you. Every human being lives by a set of priorities. A set of priorities. A set of values. Things that are most important down to least important. things that are what is highest value or highest priority, and down what is lowest in priority and lower in value. Can I have a hand agreement that you have this in your life? Can you see this? Would you agree that some things are just not important and other things are vitally important, as they call it? 99%, when I go around to the rooms, and I just did a tour in Australia a few weeks back, and I asked about 4,000 people, how many of you want to be financially independent? Now, all put your hands up. Then I went around and I asked them to write down if they were to automatically have, let's say, a $10 million given to them. What would they do with it? What would you do if you had $10 million? And I had everybody write it down, what they would do if they had $10 million. And it was very revealing because when they wrote it down, everybody went busy writing down, if I had $10 million, what I would do. And we went around the room, and I showed very clearly the 99% one percenters. Because when I asked them to write down and then read out to each other what they would do if they had $10 million, 99% of the room wrote down that they would spend their money on consumables and depreciables. They buy a car, which is a consumable and depreciable. They buy a house, which is a consumable and depreciable, unless they're going to rent it out, property rental. They take that trip, which is consumable and depreciable. They buy those clothes. They buy something for a friend. You got my point? 99% of the people in that room, unknowingly, were spending their money on depreciables and consumables. And 1% of the people in the room actually made sure that their money was put into depreciables, non-consumables, that grew in wealth. That means they would go and invest it and make sure that it would double. Only 1%. So everybody in that room, but the 1%ers, believed in a fantasy that they were going to be financially independent. And there's two types of financial independence. One is where the money's working for you and you're independent from having to work for money, which is the classical. And the other, where you're completely independent of any money. And 99% of the people have that one. And when they saw that, they got it. So I'd like you to maybe write this, that the hierarchy of your values dictates your financial destiny. The hierarchy of your values dictates your financial destiny. I'm going to say it again. The hierarchy, the priority list of your values, your priorities, will dictate your financial destiny. So let's say you have money coming in, and I'm going to just make it X. If your highest value is your children, children's clothes, children's education, children's health, children's entertainment, house, furniture, travel, food, shopping, shoes, 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 Jimmy Choo shoes, shoes. The second money comes in, how's it spent? No. Children. You will always spend your money on where your value, what you value most. I want you to really get that, because that's a real wake-up call, because unless you value financial independence, it will never stay with you. Money circulates through the economy from those who value it least to those who value it most. In Tibet, many years ago, they did a very interesting experiment. They took all the wealth and equally distributed it socially. The wealthy, they took it. The poor, they distributed it. Everybody had the equal amount in Lhasa as a social experiment. In 3 months, the money was redistributed. back to the same people. Because money circulates through the economy to those who value it most from those who value it least. Now, most people confuse wanting to get money to spend and buy things as valuing money. They don't value money. They value the things they want to spend it on. How many of you understand the difference? And as long as you value consumables and depreciables, you will never have money working for you. You will always be working for it. I know this is common sense, but we sometimes forget the common sense. Got to go back to the basics, yes? I hope I'm not offending you by this simplicity. Now, so no matter how much you make, it's not how much you make that matters. It's how you manage what you make. And the hierarchy of your values dictates how you manage it. It's not how much you make. It's how you manage what you make. And how you manage it is based on the hierarchy of your values. I had a guy in Florida. I spoke to a conference of doctors in Florida a number of years ago. And this doctor came up to me after I spoke, and he said, you know, a light bulb went on while you were speaking. And I said, okay. He says, I'd like to know if I can hire you to consult with you. I said, I'm here till through the weekend. I'd be glad to consult with you. So I went over to his office on Friday. His gross income to his company and his business was $6-point-something million per year, which is a fair business. But at the end of the year, he was stressed because he had to borrow $329,000 to pay taxes. So you think, well, how can you make $6.27 million in a year and have to borrow $329,000 to pay your taxes? That doesn't make sense. But his values were fancy cars, fancy homes, fancy boats, fancy travel, parties, travels, you got it? And taxes and savings didn't exist. So at the end of the year, he was devaluing those and running out of those because things that are lower on your value run out of money for. And things higher on your values you always find money for. So he was behind on his taxes and every year was stressed and thinking that no matter how much I do, I can't get enough money. Now here's the irony. While I was there working with him, I met his secretary, the front desk, who made $2,000 a month and saved $400 out of $2,000 every month. She saved 20% of her income. She was on her way to becoming financially independent, working for a guy that was in debt, making $6.27 million a year. Are you with me? It has nothing to do with how much money you make. It has everything to do with how you manage what you make, and the hierarchy of your values dictates how you manage it. Now, watch really carefully. Whatever's highest on your value you're inspired from within to do. We call it an intrinsic value. It means nobody has to motivate you from the outside or remind you to do it. Would you agree a 10-year-old that loves video games, nobody has to get them up and remind them to do it? They just love doing it. That's the way I feel about teaching. I love teaching. I think you came to a class I did at my little apartment where 27 people came. October will be 30 years. Didn't you come to that? Way back in our little apartment. I had a little dumpy little apartment. I think we had 27 people in that little apartment one night. 29 years ago. And I love it. I love teaching. So nobody has to remind me to do it. If you ever say you want to do something, and you have to be reminded to do it. Whatever you say you want to do is not what you want to do. It's an injected value by somebody you've given authority to. Because if it's something you absolutely love to do that's truly inspired by your own values, you don't have to be reminded. Nobody has to remind me to do what I love doing. So if you ever need reminding or motivating from the outside, what you're doing is not you. It's not the authentic you. So you're inspired from within to do what's most important. And you require outside motivation. To do the things lower down the values, which we call extrinsic values. These are means to an end, but this is the end in mind. The highest value is the end in mind. The highest value is the chief aim, as Napoleon Hill would call it. It's the magnificent obsession, as Ed Tullison would call it. It's the thing that we're inspired and love doing most.